I facilitate meditations, and I do that with the use of crystal and Tibetan singing bowls. And I do pranic energy healing as well, which is going through the energy body, the chakras, and clearing away all the contaminated parts in the chakras and releasing them. And I also teach pranic energy healing. So I just dove into it and I noticed how much my life changed from that.
You're listening to the Revive Couple Podcast. We're Michael and Laura, and together we'll explore everything relationships, personal responsibility, feminine and masculine dynamics, communication, and just some all-around real and raw conversations.
Drawing from our 18 years together, with a bit of sarcasm, humor, tears, a few and lots of love, we deep dive into the male and female perspectives on relationships and navigating the highs and lows of life together. Sit back, grab your love mug, and let's get into today's conversation. All right, today I have my friend Tara Harty as a guest, and she is a spiritual life coach. We've been kind of talking about what can we talk about today because we have known each other for over 20 years,
Wow.
I believe. And so where I would like to go with this today is to hear a little bit about Tara's journey, because today she is a spiritual life coach, but her life wasn't always like this. She lived a high-stressed life, felt misaligned. That showed up in all areas of her life. And she's been on an incredible journey the last 6 years. And so we're just going to let it flow and dive into this today and see where it leads us, listen to Tara's story, because I do believe a lot of us will see ourselves within her journey. And then we're just going to flow with it because that's what her and I do. We just go with the flow and chat about what comes up. So welcome, Tara. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you were like one of my top people where I was like, okay, when we're going to start interviewing other people, I will ask Tara because I think you do have an incredible story. So I would love for you to start there and just share with us kind of where this journey of, I always say coming back home to yourself, right? Or aligning with your true self, where that really began for you.
Okay, awesome. It's so easy, easy as my throat jams up to talk about now. But when I put myself in the energy of where I was 6 years ago, that's when I jam up because of going back to who I was so jammed up and like not able to speak my truth, not able to speak up for myself, and really not trusting myself because of all of the things around me telling me that I couldn't trust myself. And so stepping into not trusting myself, I have 3 kids and I had kids early, divorced early, and then like really trying to figure out who I was and like taking on just figuring out how to be a single mom, figuring out how to get back into the workforce because I stayed at home for 10 years raising my kids. And all of a sudden, I got to work. Like I have to find work outside of my home. And so then it just went to like taking any kind of job that I could take. And then it ended up into some really hard jobs. And at that point, it was all about the money. And so long hours, long days, or many days in a row, which was really stressful. And just kind of working in an environment where I was not appreciated, I guess, and high stress coming from all angles. And then plus my home life was high stress with the kids trying to figure out all this stuff and trying to figure out myself. And so there was a lot that showed up with me when I didn't know who I was. I was working a job that was totally not in alignment with me. And so I was always sick. Like, seriously, I'd get like the flu all the time. I'd always have a cold. I'd always have migraines, all this stuff all the time. And so that led for kind of a shitty outcome at work because I'd go to work and I'd just be sick and I'm like, okay, like trying to deal with all this stuff. Um, and I was working oil field actually. And so at that point, I worked it for quite a few years, but at some point the oil field was crashing. So then in my job, I would get all the workers that were angry because they weren't getting enough work or they were getting too much work and working for like hardly anything. And then I would get the others that were like, I was dispatching. So it was like, why aren't my loads being hauled? Well, my guys have way too much work. And then it was like, well, tanks are going to go over if we don't get this hauled. And it was just like all this pressure and this stress and trying to figure everything out. And then my kids at home were totally suffering. Like, I don't like, they're amazing. I don't even know how they got through all of that. But so one day I knew things weren't right. And this pranic energy healing course showed up on Facebook. And I was like, I don't know what any of this is, but it says you can heal yourself. And I think I need to heal myself because I couldn't. And like my relationships were just awful. And so I signed up for this course. And then further down the road, I got so sick. Like I couldn't get off the couch. I was so stressed, so sick. And I went to my doctor that had been my doctor for 20 years. And he goes, Tara, you don't have the flu. Like you're not sick. He said, you're stressed. Like you're so stressed, your body can't function anymore. And so then he's like, I'm putting you on a medical leave. You need some time off work. And so my first thoughts were like, are you fucking kidding me? Now I can't work and make money? Like, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, nope. And so then I had to go to work, and that was super embarrassing. Like, oh, I can't work. Like, everything was just crashing down on me. And it just so happened to be that it was a Monday. I got on the stress leave. And then that following weekend was the pranic energy healing course. And it was a full 2-day course. I took it and it completely changed my world, like totally changed everything. Um, just it was such a healing weekend and I learned so much about myself and I was just shown so many people that actually cared and really like I actually felt love and everything probably for the first time really and like whoa, okay. And so from there I practiced like clearing the chakras and we'll get into that later. But really connecting to my own self, my own energy body, everything, and realizing like where I was in life and where I shouldn't be. And so from there, I ended up being on a medical leave for 3 months. And I figured out how to make money. I started like working with crystals, making bath bombs, and really sinking in and getting really creative and doing lots of meditating and working on myself. My kids were actually, for the first little bit, they were like, are you home again, mom? Like, yeah, I'm home. They're like, oh, wow, this is a lot of you. But in the end, it was just like, oh, what are we going to do today? How are we doing this? And then we really got to connect and it just changed everything. And then I continued taking more courses with pranic energy healing. And then when I went back to work, and I asked my doctor, I'm like, can you just give me a few more weeks? And he was like, no, Tara, like you're good. Like you're emotionally healthy. You're good to go back to work. I'm like, oh, okay. I really just wanted to go do a yoga. I wanted to go become a yoga teacher. So I wanted some time off. And he was like, no. So anyway, I go back to work and I'm like, I no longer want this position that I'm doing anymore. And he's like, Tara, what are you going to do? Like, you need the money. I'm like, nope. I figured out how to do other things and like, and not worry about the money. And he was like, really? Yeah. So he moved me to this different position. And just from all the experience I had, it was a really cool position for me to be in. And I could sit around and like just watch the other dispatchers. I'm like, hey, do you need any help? As I'm like super calm and I've got my crystals around me. And they're like, what are those crystals? Like, are you seriously, are they helping you keep that calm? I'm like, yep. So next thing you know, everybody's got crystals and essential oils on their desk and everything like that. And it just totally changed my whole entire life. And yeah, I don't know. And ever since then, things have just been getting better. Yeah.
And you stayed at that job for a while, though,
Yeah, after.
in that position,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, but things weren't stressful
No, yeah.
or as stressful.
They were they were stressful, but they were a lot easier to handle. And it was almost like if I can like really go back, I wasn't taking it on as myself being so this is yeah, as like I was a failure, I was failing at this job because that's where it was before. All of a sudden I could see it from an outsider, kind of like, oh, oh yeah, okay, that's not working. Like it was just totally different where I wasn't blaming myself for everything. So much different. And I did stay there for 2 years after. And I actually had gotten laid off here in town, but I was offered a position that was 8 hours away from my home. And just with things changing so much, I was like, do I take that job? I don't know. And I had talked to my ex-husband and I was like, hey, I have this opportunity, but what are we going to do with the kids? Because we share the kids. And he's like, you know what? Go, we'll figure out the kids. This will work. So he really supported me in that time. And I was like, what? Okay. But just doing all that healing on myself, like it just played out in all areas around me. And when I went to that job position, I was just like, I would sit at my desk and I'd have these chairs and I called them my therapy chairs. The drivers would come in and they would just sit there and be like, my knee really hurts. So I'm like, oh, I can help you with that. Let me do some pranic healing. And next thing you knew, I was taking my singing bowls to camp and I was just definitely like doing lots of stuff there. So it was really cool. And then when that job ended, I had the opportunity to step into more kind of oil field stuff. And but the guys that were like, Tara, why? This isn't who you are. Like, why don't you go do your meditations and your healing and stuff? I'm like, I really want to. Like, I love it. But I still had that kind of conditioning of like, but that's not really a real job. Like, I need to have this real job. And they're like, you'll do fantastic. Like, do what you're doing. And so I was like, you're right. I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And I had to say no, of course, because the universe tests you. Like, oh, here's this really good job opportunity. I'm like, nope, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. And so that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago that I finally like really stepped into what I do now.
You quit your job full time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago? Yeah. Okay. Funny how I feel like time, especially in this chat we've been having so far, is so irrelevant. Right. Like, I'm just like, I've known you for 20 years. You've been doing this for 10 years. I don't know. When did you quit your job? You don't even know.
Doesn't even matter. Yeah.
Right. And that's what's really interesting when you live in this like victimhood lack state, whether that is showing up in finances or career, or I mean, in your case, at that time, essentially all areas of your life, right? And then now swinging over and doing like a complete 180 in your life to a lot of those factors just don't even exist because you trust that it's all working out, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't just happen.
No.
It obviously took work.
Yeah.
But for you to quit your job, like that's a huge trust factor, right?
Huge trust. And I had the people looking at me going, is there something wrong with you? Like, are you okay? You're quitting your job and you're gonna what? Play with singing bowls all the time? Yes, I am. And even I'm gonna bring my ex-husband into this because he was like, so what are you doing? Do you actually like things are good? Yep, things are good. Okay. He's like, well, the kids seem good. like, like, yep. And he's like, okay. And then he never asked again. He never questioned anything. It was just like he could see it through the kids when the kids came back to him that things were a lot different.
And I think that's so cool to note because so often we look for others for validation, right? Especially when we are not confident in our own choices and never really have, and we've relied on other people or other external factors. But as we become trusting of ourselves, we don't need that anymore. And then the evidence shows up, right? So instead of being in this like mode of, I need to prove to people that I can do
Yeah.
this. It's like, no, I just step into my truth and I do what I know I'm good at. I do what I know I'm feeling pulled to and called to, and I don't have to explain it to anyone. And then the evidence shows up itself, right? People feel it. It's a frequency, it's a vibration
Yeah.
that you're not trying to force down their
Right.
throat and convince them. Because I often think too, when we're trying to convince other people, really what we're doing is trying to convince
Yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But when you have that deep truth and knowing in yourself, then you don't have to do that. And then people are like attracted to you, right?
Absolutely.
You're totally magnetic and opportunities are magnetic. So I would love to hear more about what you do now. Like what, so you
You're
explained,
right.
how those days went and they were stressful and chaotic. You had crazy relationships, you
Yes.
said. Your kids were stressed, you were stressed, you were sick. But like, what's the duality of that now? What is happening in your life on a daily basis on this side of it
Okay.
since you've moved
Yeah.
through the muck?
Yes.
Well, we're always moving through
Yeah.
the muck, but
That's true. Things are just so different. My life is a lot easier. And geez, like the last time I think I might have got like sick in August. I think I got COVID, maybe. I don't know. I didn't check. But anyway,
okay.
I just took some time off. And then before that was probably over a year. Like I hardly get sick anymore. I still get migraines. I'm working on that, but that's led me into studying herbology and really learning about the healthy eating and stuff. Cause that is also something I never used to do. It was like, quick, okay, let's grab fast food because I'm way too tired to do any cooking and cleaning. We're just gonna eat junk food. and and now I have all of this time. Like, I just have all this time and time to cook really good foods and eat really healthy. And just like, yeah, everything has changed in that aspect too. So it's just led me into studying more about plants and stuff like that and how they can heal us. And sorry, I kind of got off topic, I think.
No, that's okay. It's all
Okay. Okay.
relevant.
Uh,
And someone needed
yeah.
to hear that.
um, yeah, I just have like a lot of time to be creative and what I do is I work with clients one-on-one and I teach clients and stuff like that. So I facilitate meditations and I do that with the use of crystal and Tibetan singing bowls. And I do pranic energy healing as well, which is going through the energy body, the chakras, and clearing away all the contaminated parts in the chakras and releasing them. And I also teach pranic energy healing. So I just dove into it and I noticed how much my life changed from that one weekend that I dove into it. And now I also instruct the first level of pranic healing.
I'm just like sitting here curious. Do you see people like you when you're instructing now? And that must be super interesting, right? To be like, I was you however many years ago. And they come in, their life is chaos. And you're just like, your life is about to be
All the
transformed.
time. And I think, and that was, yes, that's like my favorite when I see somebody come in and it's still like, it blows my mind every day. I'm sure that I have somebody that comes to me and I was like, oh, you're like a version of me from last year, or you're a version of me from 30 years ago. Like, it's so cool. Or somebody even comes in and they're like, I can't understand my kid, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I can. Like, I can relate to exactly what your kid is going through because that used to be me. And so when they can see a different side, they'll be like, oh, and come back and like, hey, we can actually, I understand what's going on with my child. So, yeah, there's so many different versions that I get to look at and get really excited for.
Yeah. I love that too. Like in my coaching, when women come and they're like at their kind of rock bottom and feeling like there's nowhere to go, I obviously internalize this because I'm not going to say to you when you're like at your worst that this is so amazing.
No.
Because I'm pretty sure if someone said that to me, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not coming back to you.
Yeah.
But I see that within them, right? And I just know that it's like, ultimately you do have nowhere to go but up. But at the same time, I think there's so much blessings in that rock bottom or those struggles when you reach that point of being like, I can't do this anymore because now there is nowhere to go but up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was talking with my mentor on our podcast a few episodes back about ripple effects and how, you know, because we make one decision to do something for ourselves, like you made a decision to go to that pranic energy weekend, and it changed the trajectory of your whole life, right? But now, how many ripple effects have you created in other people's lives because of that one choice that you made? And so I think just like the most important piece of advice to go out to women who are struggling, again, whether that's in knowing what they want to do with their life or relationship struggles, financial struggles, is knowing that you just have to take one step, right? And it doesn't have to seem like a huge step. Just continue being curious and being open. And you just take one step at a time. You don't have to see the whole staircase or know like exactly where you're going right now. It's just one step at a time and you'll get there. So I love that about like, especially when you can look back, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're sitting here now and looking back, you're like, that's a pretty incredible journey.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do.
It's scary. And that's what makes having a mentor or coach really important. Like, no matter where you're at, we're always growing and climbing, right? I did have a coach, and that was the first time actually when I decided, nope, I'm going to pursue this lifestyle. And I did. I was like, okay, I need a coach. And I'm just like so thankful because she just helped me like walk through things and really process things as they were showing up with me.
Totally. Because I know because I've been in it, and I know because you've been in it, and there's women listening to this, that we only know what we know, right? And we only will continue to create the same experiences that we've experienced in our past because we don't know the potentiality of what's out there or like what's possible for us because we're so stuck in thinking those same thoughts over and over again and believing the same things about ourselves, right? So when we hire a coach or a mentor and they just hold that container and expand our understanding of ourselves and what we're capable of, I think that that's like massive.
Even having somebody hold, okay, this is so cool because even having somebody hold space for you as you share, you see things totally different. And so I'm totally going to share. When we started this podcast, and you're like, do I say anything about studying herbology? And I'm like, no, not at all. And then all of a sudden I got reminded, oh, wait, yes, this is why I'm studying herbology, is because of how much it's actually changed my life. So I'm like, right, okay. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. As soon as we can like get those thoughts out,
Yeah.
right, it makes so much more sense. We have the aha moments. That is actually very interesting with the coaching side of things because, I don't know if some people think, I used to think that coaching was like, well, they'll just tell me what to do and they'll guide me. But a lot of it is just asking the right kind of questions so that that person comes to their own
Yeah.
realizations on their own, like you just did.
Yeah. I
Right.
was like,
And,
that just happened in this call.
and you and I do this all the time, like in Voxer, right?
Yeah.
We'll just like go off sharing messages with each other. And then we're like, I don't really know why I shared that. And then I'll be like, I know why you shared that because you just helped me process this through your sharing your experience. But then we have these aha moments of ourselves through sharing something that we think is so irrelevant and
Right.
makes no sense.
So good.
And other people listening in might be like, what are they even talking about? But it makes sense to
Right.
us. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I want to touch on a little bit about control
Mm.
and letting go of control and surrendering because ultimately, at the beginning of your journey, it was like tight,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like need to figure out money, need to make money. And it was very much like a need to do all of this, right? Need to survive, definitely survival mode. How did you go from that to being in this state now of like, I completely, and I mean, it's been years, but like, I completely, just trust that the money is coming. I know that my clients show up. I know that I'm taken care of. I know my kids are taken care of. I trust that my relationship is great and that I can grow and evolve through that. Like, obviously, there's a lot that took you there, but are there some main points that stand out that helped you to let go of control and controlling external factors and beginning to learn to trust yourself?
I think the turning point was definitely, I'm going to call it rock bottom, where holy fuck, I can't work. I can't do anything when I got put on a medical leave, and which seemed the end of the world. And I was so conditioned to believe that my worth was around the kind of money I made, the kind of job I had, all that stuff. When deep down I was like, I fucking hate this job, but I need it. Right. And then just like everything just totally got stripped from me. And then when I started learning about meditation and raising my vibrations and how when you do the work, it just like expands around you. So essentially expanding yourself. And then when you meditate, you raise your vibrational frequency, which connects you to other high vibrational frequency things and opportunities, I'm going to call them. They just show up right in front of you. Like they're all just like right here. And it's up to you to choose, do I grab that one or that one or that one? Because there's so many that just constantly show up. And and I mean, it's obvious, like you can go up, everything that goes up must come down. You just have to kind of, be prepared. And every time, what am I trying to say? So you can have all the good things and then it does kind of slow down a bit, but just knowing that, yes, I just need to rest, that it's all gonna, and it's like a constant climb of up and down. I don't know if that makes sense, but just trusting that everything shows up and that we do need rest in between. So sometimes it may look like, and I really had to just understand this, that sometimes it looks like nothing is happening, but it's just that resting period before something massive shows up for us or with us.
Pre- Preparing you,
Yeah.
right? I think that is really important to note because a lot of times we think that we're failing if things aren't moving forward, right? But that's a part of surrendering and trusting, as you're saying, is to just accept the ebbs and the flows
Yeah.
as well and stay in that trusting energy instead of going into self-doubt and spiraling downward. And now my throat chakra is like closing up. Um, Okay, this brought me to, well, a few things, but we were talking earlier, and now this is coming up in what you're saying of honoring your feelings and how we can push that aside and try to resist it. And you and I both still do it after all of the, awareness that we have in the as much as we coach our clients and talk about processing emotions and feeling emotions, that when it actually comes to real life and showing up for people, how that can sometimes be hard because of our programming. So, we were talking earlier about how we were supposed to record this podcast a few days ago, but I reached out to you the day before and was like, are we still on for tomorrow at this time? And you felt like my energy was off, which is because it totally was, because I didn't want to record because I was feeling a bit frazzled and just feeling off and kind of busy as well. And instead of just like straight up telling you that, I kind of asked you, and then you were like, yeah, but you were feeling it as well. And then finally, we kind of came to an excuse as to why we couldn't do it without fully saying it. And we scheduled it for 2 days later, and now here we are, and our energy is like completely different. But share your perspective on that side that you were telling me before, because I think that that's really important for women to hear, when all we hear is, oh, honor your feelings,
Yeah.
speak your truth, share how you're feeling. And then when it comes to real life, what that can look like.
Yeah. I just want to say before I explain it, this is a total when things are really good and then when they're at a low and you need a break. Like this is just was that time when we both needed to surrender. Um, yeah, so you text me and I get the text and I was like, "Whoa, like she seems kind of bitchy." Is what I was thinking. And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "I'm really like it was just a full moon and I definitely sync my whole system to the moon and just did a full moon ceremony a few days before our scheduled call was. And I was really heavy. Full moon, I'm totally crying. I'm releasing, like almost lethargic, if that's the right word. I had no energy. And I'm like, what is happening? And then when you sent me that text, I'm like, is this my energy kind of rejecting Laura? Because I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to, or is it hers?" And I'm like, I think that's hers. And then I said, yeah, I'll be there. Meanwhile, it's like, I don't want to be there. And then yeah. And then when you said it's both on camera and mic, I'm like, "Oh, I have an appointment and I don't really want to be on camera." And so I was like, "Oh, thank God." And then you were like, "Yeah, okay." And it was just like,
Yeah, because then I was honest as well, right? Of like, I don't know, I'm processing some emotions and I just don't, it's too much for me. I had another appointment booked that day and I was like, I don't want to work that much that day. And so we were sinking into our conditioning and our programming, right? And how you were like, well, I don't want to be
"Oh,
flaky.
yeah, sorry, I didn't even say that part." Yeah, exactly. I was like, "Okay, if I don't really want to show up, but if I don't, then I don't want her to think that I'm a flake and not going to follow through with what our original plan was." So then I wanted to honor you and I stuck with the plan. Meanwhile, I was not honoring myself at all.
Right. So that's like, I just think this is such an interesting topic because in this world of, femininity becoming like an uprising of like, tap into your femininity and honor yourself. And like I said, speak your truth. But then we still live in a very masculine world of like, oh, but not today
Yeah.
or not in this situation. So it can be really hard to navigate that, right? Because of I would say our conditioning of like not wanting to let people down or,
Mm.
what will they think of us? But also our world just doesn't function that way. It hasn't in the past. I do believe that the more we talk about this kind of stuff and normalize it, that it will continue to get better and better. But you were jamming on about how you sync with the moon. And I think that's an important factor to bring up because a lot of women may not know this that, you know, the men run on a 24-hour cycle and women run on an average 28-day cycle, right? And so we are trying to fit into a world of 24-hour cycles, which like essentially the structure of our, businesses and just society, schooling, all of the things, money, structure itself is built around the man cycle of the 24 hours, right? But as women, we don't function that way. Like
Not
there are
at
weeks
all.
where we're like, I'm not feeling it, but we force ourselves. And so I think that's just a really important piece to address. And maybe you have something to say about that. But also, like, I think it's so relevant in relationships as well, because understanding is an important piece to know that, like, I'm not meant to be like my partner or my
Mm.
husband, and he's not meant to be like me. And I can't expect the same things of myself that, I expect of him or vice versa.
I really have troubles with the clock. Like, I really think, I don't know, it does not exist for me. That is a
Right.
struggle for me. I just roll with how I'm feeling.
And you always
Yeah,
have, right?
yeah.
But people, like myself included, made that wrong about you because it's like, honor my time, be
Right?
here on time, right? But now being more in this state of like, it is hard to be on time. Like it's when you're in a flow state, it is hard to commit to things. I mean, kind of a little bit off track here, but I was thinking about putting Lennox in public kindergarten this past year. And then I got really honest with myself and I was like, there is no way that I will be out of my house, or do I even desire to be out of my house by 8 o'clock in the morning? And so I didn't put him in kindergarten. I was like, we are homeschooling. And he's totally like cool to homeschool and loves homeschooling. And that worked out. But I just had to get really honest with myself. And time was a huge factor. I was like, I used to be so like committed to time and like being on time or being 20 minutes early and
Yeah.
like being that type A personality of having everything scheduled and structure and scheduled. I already said that. And now I feel like I've swung to the other side where I'm like, I can't commit to that. Sorry.
This is so funny. I have, like, so much to say now that we're on this topic. Um, so speaking of being in the flow of honoring yourself and how you're feeling in regards to time and stuff like that. So after the full moon, I always get the day of being super energized, of this beautiful energy that's rolling through my body. And I get really creative and I make way too many plans that I probably shouldn't. And then when I'm kind of off of that full moon high, like the next 3 days after, that I'm so depleted and I just need to integrate all of the healing and stuff that showed up with me. And so now I've really learned to communicate. I had a friend message me on one of the days after the full moon, and she's like, "Hey, blah, blah, blah," asking me all these questions. And I was like, I don't even want to answer that text. Like, I'm not answering it. But just because I also am going to honor where you're at, I'm like, she needs to know. So I just sent her a simple text of, "Hey, I do not have space today. I'll talk to you when I can." That's it. And her reply was just so beautiful. That was it. There was no like feelings of guilt or anything because I couldn't talk to her because I didn't have space. It was just a straight up like, no space. Thank you. It didn't take much for me to send that out and I felt good. And then 2 days later, she's like, "Wow, you are really showing me. Like, thank you for showing me that it's okay to say that." I was like, "You're welcome. And I hope you do that too." So, yeah.
That is so important
Mm.
because I think ultimately we're raised to, say nice things and do things for others,
Yeah.
or at least that's how we made it be or feel for ourselves. That can be really hard to set those boundaries because you don't want that other person to feel rejected,
Yes.
right? Especially if you're coming from like a fixer, people pleaser. But as you go inwards and you work on yourself through your own journey, I believe that you don't have to fix people as much because I'm a big believer that when we focus on other people, that it's a distraction from doing our own work, right? And so we have people in our life who might be used to coming to us for all of these
Mhm.
things because we're that person. Oh, yeah, I can help you process that, or I can help you move through that, or I'll just listen and maybe even gossip, or all of the things. But as you begin honoring yourself, one, you don't need that
Yeah.
in your life anymore. But then I love that you pointed out that you showed her what's possible for her. And I think that that's super important. I love that you shared all that, because I was going to ask you, like, what would be a tip that you would share with women on, I'm learning all of this stuff, but how do I implement it into my life? And I think another thing to add to that, and I would love to hear if you agree on this, is not taking other people's reactions
Oh,
personally,
yes.
because, I think you doing that, and I've done this before too, where that person could then feel rejected, right? And I felt that in my past with people too, where I'm like, oh, I'm not important to them, or because I do have a deep rejection wound, that then I make that mean that, when really it ultimately means nothing about me.
Yeah.
And it's just you honoring, but you definitely like show the other person what is possible, right? So yeah, just not like making it about you, and letting them have their journey and letting them have their experience, because you can't take on everyone's stuff all the time, because then you're no good for them,
Yeah.
right?
And yeah, just sending out that simple text of, "Hey, I don't have space," honors them, honors you, but it also sets a boundary so they can reply with whatever they want. It doesn't matter. That's
Hmm.
totally about them. It's like I've already like, this is where I'm at, done, right? And she could have like it could have went, but blah 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 blah, and I would not have replied. And but I think just putting that, like, it came from my heart, right? And so she received, and she was also able to be like, thank you for showing me that, right?
Hmm. And I love that you said the word communication,
Yeah.
because ultimately, I think, I mean, Mike and I do a lot of relationship work, right? And relationships with ourselves, relationships with our partners, our kids, but communication is always the piece that comes up and is like that core piece. Because in this situation you're talking about, I think it's so easy to, not want to share your truth. Like we said, I just don't have the capacity to talk about this right now, but I probably will tomorrow or in the next day. But then all of the stories that creates, if you don't just share
Yeah.
from that authentic heart opening space, right? So you could hold that in, and then they're holding things in. And if you think about this being even in your intimate relationships, just like how much pressure is building, how much resentment is building. And then eventually that's all going to come out. So as women, I think that we hold a lot of power in essentially trailblazing through our relationships, when we can begin, one, honoring ourselves and what we are feeling, so that two, we can begin to express that to our partners authentically, and not from a like
Yeah.
blaming place, right? And then we just start building new patterns throughout our relationship, because we're actually communicating truthfully and authentically.
Yeah.
And with our kids too, obviously, especially as they get older. But actually, Lennox is only 5, and I feel like there's obviously certain things I don't share with him, because he doesn't need to know
Yeah.
about a 5-year-old that his mom is going through. But I share with him that, like, you know what, I'm just feeling really impatient today because I didn't sleep well last night. So, this is why I'm a little bit more flustered today, or I'm not feeling like going for that long walk or bike ride or whatever, right? Just actually communicating, and instead of expecting him to know, I hope that that's like a great tool that I'm teaching him for moving through
Definitely.
life and understanding.
And I don't wanna share too much about my kids, but, just because I wanna honor them. I
Mhm.
have 3 kids, and they're all, well, the first 2 are 3 years apart, and then my youngest is 4 years from my son.
From your middle one.
What's that?
From your
I
middle
did want to
child.
say the middle child. He's like, oh,
Oh,
I'm the
yes.
middle
We're
child. So I
not.
was trying not to say that.
Oh, is this a thing?
It's a
Okay.
thing. And
Sorry.
right. And anyway, so the young one, he is so awesome. Like he's been raised so differently because of where I'm at and the things that I've gone through. Like he's gotten to grow and witness 6 years of me becoming who I am. And so for him, it's so much easier for him to communicate and speak his truth. And he actually taught that to me, which is so funny. Like he definitely came in to show me to use my words because I remember I'd be like, you cannot do that. You have to, like, you cannot go to your friend's house after school. You have to come home so we know that you're home. And he's like, but why? Why can't I just let you know I'm going to my friend's place? I don't know. Like, he just always questioned. And I'm like, right, okay. Because at that point, I would have been coming from parenting from a place of control and not a place of, I don't know, communication, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. So he taught me how not to parent from a place of control, which is really cool. And he's so very open. And even with the older two kids, like he teaches them how to do things. And they're like, oh, okay. So it's just really cool. And again, that shows up because of where we're all at. If I was still where I was 6 years ago, like we would massively be conflicting and he would probably be in lots of trouble, right? So it's just interesting.
Super cool. Totally tying it all back to that whole surrendering and trusting, right?
Yeah.
But I also believe that your older kids experienced exactly what they needed to
Yes.
experience,
Yeah.
right? And then now they're having the experience that they need now.
Yes.
But I do think, children are so, and I mean, not meaning to call your youngest a child because he's not
No.
a child anymore, but children, they're just so in tune. And it is interesting that they can teach us so much when we don't have to be that authority figure to them. Like, obviously, yes, we're here to guide them and protect them and keep them safe. But I think like the old style of parenting, which like this could be another topic we talk about another day, goes so deep, of like needing to be right. And I think that all comes from, definitely some wounded spaces of generational stuff passed down, right? And it comes from love generally, an unconscious kind of love, unconscious actions from love. But anyways, we'll talk about that another day because we could probably talk a lot about that. But I think that that's really cool. I love how your journey has unfolded for you. I love where you're at today, what you're doing with people, how you show up for your kids, how you show up in your relationship and inspire so many people of what's possible for them. So thank you for having this chat with me today. I mean, we can totally have more chats down the line because we have so much to chat about all the time. But where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you and learn more about what you do?
You can find me on my website, if you like, which is Hart, HART, and soulessentials.net, or Instagram, same thing, Heart and Soul Essentials, and Facebook, Heart and Soul Essentials.
Okay, perfect. We'll also link that in the show notes too, so that people know. Because yes, the heart. I love what you did with that too, because heart is because of your last name, right? Yeah. That's super, super creative of you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Tara, and we'll chat again soon.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Check out our offerings on social media at The Revived Couple and online at therevivedcouple.com. Have a request for a show topic? We love that. Send us an email at michael@larocklife.com or DM at The Revived Couple.
And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review.